And hello, car lovers, and welcome to the C&C Auto Show. I'm Aaron Clements.
I'm John Ryan.
And we are both here because we would love to share some information with you. And our goal is to give you information on ways to make your car, truck, or SUV safer, to make it more dependable, and to make it last longer for less money and less hassle. And we are into a power hour. We did a power hour a while back.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of great comments from that. A lot of people said they really enjoyed that show because we answered so many questions, and it's like drinking a little water from a fire hose. We just kind of give the information really quick and go through the questions. So we'll be doing that very quickly or very shortly.
Yeah.
Just after we crank up. And before we do, though, I want to mention that if you are looking for good automotive repair almost anywhere in the country, you can go to NapaAutoCare.com and look for the shop that's right for you. And I will mention also that you can watch this show on Facebook Live, and you can watch past shows on the YouTube channel, the C&C Auto Show YouTube channel. We have Alan Dean here with us. He's going to be asking the questions, and we are going to jump right into it because we are ready. Alan,
You want me to start it up for you?
Yeah, go. Oh, we got to crank the car. We didn't crank yet. All right, here we go. That's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty healthy.
So we're ready?
Yep.
All right, Alan.
And thanks again for letting me be part of the show today. What does viscosity mean, and what role does it play in motor oil?
Okay. Viscosity is typically how oil is measured.
Yep.
It's the
resistance to flow.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. That
Sounds like somebody actually looked that up.
No, I knew.
Sure you did. Aaron, I see Wikipedia right there. Anyways, it's basically how the oil is measured. Obviously, there's several different viscosity weights. So typically, obviously you want to follow your owner's manual as far as what your vehicle takes.
Yeah, and women.
Now for the already looked up answer.
I knew all this stuff, but I just didn't have the right words to put it in. So I admit, full disclosure, that I did peek at it just a little bit. So I
come in here, I don't even know what we're talking about.
So I would have the wording right. Okay, let's say, for instance, you have 5W30 oil. The weight, the W stands for winter, and that's where
a lot of people think it
cold,
thinks for weight.
And that's measured for 0, or let's say 5. You're a 5 weight now. So in the wintertime, it is a thinner oil.
Right.
And the reason that they do that is so that it can get up to the fast-moving parts faster.
Quickly, yeah.
And then as the vehicle runs for a period of time, gets up to operating temperature about 210, then it goes up to a 30 weight. And, of course, the same thing if you have a 10W30. It's 10 weight in the wintertime, 30. And it's very important to use the correct weight of oil.
It is, yeah.
And also it's very important to turn the Wikipedia off of my computer before you see it.
Busted.
But yes, that's the viscosity of oil.
All right, next question that Aaron doesn't know.
We're ready.
Yes, sir. How long? How long do the batteries and the tire pressure monitoring system sensors typically last?
Okay, that's a real good question. I would say that when they first came out, we didn't see them for a long time. I'm going to say in the range of 4 to 5 years. What happens a lot of times is when you're changing the tires and stuff like that, they can contact a tire machine. Tire machines have come so far, and really you don't see that anymore. So tire pressure, the batteries themselves, I would say last about 4 to 5 years. Of course, obviously when the battery goes dead, it does have a fault. A lot of times the systems will tell you exactly which sensor is bad, which is typically correct unless the tires have been rotated and not retrained. So it's important to find out which sensor is bad. Just like a lot of other things, we've talked about bulbs, replacing them in pairs and stuff like that. Those are so expensive. I typically recommend replacing those as needed, unless you find a good deal on them or something like that.
The other exception might be, let's say that if you have a vehicle that's 10 or 12, 15 years old,
right,
and you're changing the tires anyway, and now you could spend another $300 or $400
Right.
going ahead and getting all the sensors. But if you got one or two that's bad anyway,
Yeah.
and you may be getting those, I would probably strongly consider going ahead and getting the rest of the sensors while the wheels are off.
Yeah.
And you're right on the batteries at first. You see some
Oh,
that
I
go
guess it's
bad and-
important to mention too. The batteries aren't serviceable.
Right. Oh, yeah, you have to replace that whole assembly. And you run into some that do go bad as 5 years, and you see some that last 10. So
Yeah.
it's not a must that you replace them all at one time. It's not a bad idea to have some method of knowing which one was
Right.
replaced, because you can't just put right front, because once it's rotated, it's
Exactly,
somewhere
yeah.
else. You might put a little mark on the one that's been replaced so you'll know that that one's been done
Right.
in case you do the other ones at a later date. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Are some gasolines better than others? Like, what is the top tier detergent grade gasoline?
I would say, again, it kind of depends on what kind of vehicle you have as far as, number one, what does it require? For instance, if it's a vehicle that requires, say, 87 octane and it's just a low compression 4-cylinder, I think no doubt the top tier, would benefit in certain ways as far as the detergent side of it. But as far as the actual detonation, I guess, temperature, no, it's not going to.
Yeah, as a general rule, the standards for gasoline have become fairly tight.
Yeah.
So there are some fuels that do have more detergents in it than others. So in
Right.
some cases, it can make some difference.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, if you're using a good name brand fuel, I'm not sure that I would spend any extra money because this one has some kind of double this or
Snake oil.
that does something special. Just use a good name brand of fuel. And I've heard you mention in another show, John Ryan, that I thought was really neat. Be careful not to buy from a station that sells very little fuel.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because, of course, I guess a shelf life would be the word for it. If it sat in the tank for a period of time versus one that has a lot of traffic coming through it, it's a good idea to, of course, still love to support the smaller stations and everything, but it's a good idea to, purchase fuel, especially diesel, in areas that is, very populated.
And of course, while we're on fuel, I'm gonna go ahead and mention just a little bit about the pricing of fuel. Of course, you want to get a good price on your fuel.
Yes.
And some of the ways that you can save money, I'm gonna mention this just real quickly. It's kind of off the subject of car maintenance, but I use a reward point deal on mine. And you buy groceries anyway. A lot of the fuel stations have award points for groceries, and you can get a certain amount. And I will tell you that just this morning, I filled up the Prius, and the Prius held. Now this is from memory. It held 8.8 gallons. It was $14, and I saved 40 cents per gallon by using my points.
Wow.
On the system.
You either ate a lot or
Yeah.
something.
Well, they add up pretty quickly, and you're getting. But I never.
See, that
use
wouldn't
it.
work for me because I don't really grocery shop. So does like fast food places offer that same
They
thing?
might, but I never use it unless I am going to fill up.
Right,
And
yeah.
So if I'm only getting $3, of course, I don't want to use my 40 cent a
Cent
gallon
off, yeah, exactly.
discount. So you can save money that way, and then of course get a good name brand reputable station that you use. And also, I'm gonna throw this out. This is totally different. A lot of the stations have incentives when you're buying things like coffee and things like that in there. If you have your refill, keep your coffee cup. You can go in. You can get save another $1 on your coffee by having your refill cup. So
Right.
you save a lot of money that way.
Since we're going on and on about that, I do want to mention one thing that was told to me by a person that actually maintains gas pumps. He said that if ever a pump is very, very slow, whether it be diesel, gas, or any grade, do not use that pump. A lot of times that's indicating that the filter is restricted, which obviously means there's a lot of trash in there. So just kind of a quick tip. We're all out of time, Aaron. You want to break us out?
Oh, yeah. We would be taking a break. We're in Power Hour, and we'll be answering a lot more questions right after this message.
Mustang Sally.
And we are back with you with the C&C Auto Show. We are in the midst of a Power Hour, so we are ready for the next question.
Yes, Aaron. I noticed you talk about your Prius a lot, so obviously you're going to be able to answer this question very well. How is the maintenance for an electric car different from a gasoline car?
Well, there's a lot of things very close. Now, of course, when you mentioned the Prius, it's actually a hybrid car, so we're actually running off of both. It's a synergy between the gas engine and also the electric power that's there. And of course, the gas engine and generative braking keep the battery charged up, so you're using both. So in that particular case, the maintenance is very similar in a lot of ways because you still have an engine that eventually needs a tune-up. You have oil that needs to be changed. Eventually, you have batteries that will need to be replaced. So you still need to have your brakes checked from time to time, fluids and things like that. There's different fluids now. With that, it is very important to use the correct fluids because you have a lot of voltage being used by the hybrid cars, depending on what year, make, model that you have. You would have different type fluids, but it is very important because some fluids may conduct current flow and cause major issues. But
the AC system is definitely like that. It requires a special oil.
Exactly, and also there's some full electric cars that still use an engine to keep the battery charged up, and they still have different things that they have to. Engine has to be maintained in the fluids. So I would say similar in a lot of ways, and it's a good idea to stick with your scheduled maintenance items and make sure that the repair facility that you go to is equipped to and has been trained on the maintenance on those particular cars.
Well, thank you very much. With that being said, what exactly makes electric cars more efficient and more a better option as opposed to a gasoline car?
Well, I think most people look at that from a financial standpoint as far as fuel economy. Obviously, all electric doesn't require fuel, but there are offsets for it. For instance, obviously it has to be charged and stuff like that. Of course, the repair would be very expensive, but it really I think it goes back to what kind of car do you need?
Yeah, what your needs are. I think that's the perfect way of putting it. Because, for instance, John Ryan would not be happy with a Prius. I'm going to promise you that.
Yeah.
Now, I love the Prius. I drive it, but I do realize that my takeoff power is not 500 or 600 horsepower like John Ryan has in his truck. But I enjoy when I go to the gas station. I fill up less often, and it holds less gas, and it does what I need it to do. Power once I'm going down the road is very good. I enjoy watching my meter to find out how far I can go on electric power as opposed to the gas engine kicking in.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be able to pull a boat with the Prius. I promise you that too. Or this assortment of toys that John Ryan.
You might go downhill with it.
So there's things. It depends on your usage, and that's where the difference between whether you would like an electric car. Let's say, for instance, you like to go on a very long trip on a regular basis, and you have in the place that you normally go is 150 miles away, and there's no charging stations along the way. You wouldn't want to buy a car that had a range of 100 miles.
Now, of course, that's for all electric.
Yeah, for all electric. You wouldn't want to buy a car that would only go 100 miles because you find yourself somewhere in between, wishing you had some electrical power.
Yeah.
The hybrid car is a very good option for me. I've enjoyed it very much. Let's say if someone lived downtown and did a lot of their driving within 10, 15, 20 miles, and a full electric car may be a good option.
Yeah, they're common like in big cities and beach towns and stuff like that basically a golf cart would do, but obviously you want to be, drive a little bit further at periods of time and stuff like that.
And have air conditioning and all the safety
normal
features of seat belts, airbags, and all the other stuff you would have. So I think that was perfect way of putting it. It depends on the driving habits that you have as to what type of vehicle would suit you best.
Right.
Thanks. Great answer. What's the range of an electric car, and how long does it take one to recharge?
Oh, that varies a lot.
It does, especially vehicle to vehicle. I would say most of them, and I'm to be honest with you, I'm probably guessing at this. I would say about 225 to 250. I believe.
A lot less. On a lot of there is one vehicle that I know of that goes that far, but as a general rule, For instance, a lot of the Nissan vehicles go roughly 100, 110 miles.
The one I was thinking of is the Tesla.
Yeah, now it will go 270 miles
Okay, I
on a
thought it was
charge.
close to
but
250.
that is a big exception to
Yeah.
the rule. For instance, the Volt, now those will run roughly 40 or 50 miles, but when they do that, the gas engine cranks up and
Kicks
starts
up, yeah.
recharging the batteries
Right.
so that you can continue to drive, but you are limited to full electric power of 40 miles or so. Nissan, a little over 100 in most cases. And that goes on and on with most of the vehicles, somewhere in the 100-mile range, some 83, some 110, but kind of averaging out around 100. The Tesla is a very much exception to the rule, and they've been sort of a leader.
Yeah, and
these.
just to be honest, like that's kind of the one I'd like to follow, just because of how the technology has gone as far as what they can do with them.
Yeah,
I really like those. So.
and they are making breakthroughs every day of making them better and better.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Are electric cars really green and safe?
Well, I'll answer that one real quick. They do help the environment in a lot of ways, but you got to figure the energy that it's taking to build these batteries. You're still emitting emissions into the atmosphere when you're building them.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is it's contained in one area, so it can be controlled and cleaned much better in one spot as opposed to a million spots of cars sold. So yes, it does help the environment in a lot of different ways, and of course, having the batteries is having core charges, so they'll be sure to dispose of them properly.
Right.
All that is very important. So yes, they do help the environment in a lot of ways. We were talking gas mileage. I'm gonna mention this real quick though. There's a lot of cars, let's say the Prius gets 45 miles to the gallon, 40, 45. A lot of Civics out there with gas engines.
I wanted to add to that, too. Of course, the Volkswagen TDIs and a lot of the newer diesels are getting the same with that same power you were talking about. A lot of those don't have.
We do want to add that in there with that. But, yes, I would say they are more environmentally friendly. It's time for another break. We are in the middle of a power hour, and we'll be answering a lot more questions as soon as we return.
Aaron Clements and John Ryan Mooney.
And we are back with you on the C&C Auto Show. We are in the middle of a power hour. We are answering a lot of questions rapidly. So we are ready for the next question.
Yes, Aaron. I've seen car companies advertising quiet steel. What exactly is quiet steel?
Ooh, I know what quiet steel is.
Only because you looked it up. What is it?
No, I don't. Quiet steel is a combination of different metals that they're building a body out of, and it has different composites in with it, and it absorbs the sound. It used to be they'd have to pack a car with insulation. Yeah. And I'm sure they still do.
Is this a specific manufacturer, or is this something new coming out?
I don't know that.
You didn't get the article in the article.
But that is different metals that they're using, and of course that's going a lot of different ways. I mean, you have cars now with aluminum frames.
Yeah, well, aluminum body panels
and aluminum body panels that's on there. And so there's so many things being done. I read one article now, I'll mention this real quick, that they're actually using metal that moves as if it's a muscle when they add electrical current to it. And they're using that instead of an electrically controlled actuator. And if I'm not mistaken, it was first used in a Corvette to where they want to open something when you close the back panel so that the air it won't kind of blow people's ears out.
Right, yeah.
When it's closed.
Won't be like a tight capsule.
When it started to close, it would open this little door, and they used it first on that. Now, I don't know. I hadn't read any articles since then on how that's going.
How about that?
But I have read articles on the new type metals that they use to absorb sound.
That's neat.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm looking to sell my car, and I want to find out how much it's worth. What are good resources to use to help me appraise my car?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think a lot of things, sometimes you have to take in account like how how are people buying cars? Where are they buying cars in your area? Whether it be like the Craigslist type thing, is it something you post on eBay? There's a lot of states that different things works better. Of course, as far as finding the value, I think there's the NADA, there's Kelley Blue Book, and then I think the most important thing is others like
real world.
Real world. For instance, if a similar vehicle's like yours that's for sale on the corner of a road, I would check it out, see what it's going for. And
Yeah,
kinda
I have
compare
sold
what you've
vehicles very cheap by just looking at the Blue Book value of
Yeah.
a vehicle. I'll put it in the paper, and all of a sudden somebody buys it really quick, and I start checking.
Right.
And in real world scenario, they're selling for much more than that. So
And I
I
think-
would weigh out all three.
I think it has a lot to do with what you've done with a vehicle. Also, for instance, my truck, like I feel fairly confident that I could sell it for what I bought it for, 8 years or however long ago it was that I bought it. But just because of the things I've done to it. So like you said, if you looked at the Blue Book, you obviously would, not sell it for the appropriate amount.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
good
Thank
question.
you. Great answer. Is it really sensible to purchase an extended warranty when buying a new car?
I mean, I myself have a little bit of mixed feelings on that. You wanna go on
I
that
have
one
mixed
first?
feelings also. Yeah, extended warranties. Now, this is across the board, actually. I put the cars in the same category that I would a computer or a lot of other
Washing
items.
machine, yeah.
If you do your shopping very carefully before you go purchase a product, and let's say that you're buying a used car and you look at the used car and you have a pre-purchase inspection done, you've done some checking with your repair facility or your service advisor, and they say, yeah, we really don't have that many problems with these. Instead of paying all that money to a warranty company, just take some of that money and maybe even put a little bit more monthly into the bank for any repairs that might come up, because you say your biggest fear is an engine or transmission. Well, if you have most of that saved away somewhere in case that emergency was to come up, boom, you're okay. And then if you don't use it, that money's laying there for you to just grab and do something else with.
Well, I think the exact same thing. The only thing I would differ is use that money for maintenance.
Yeah,
And
use
then-
it for I agree. Yeah,
Then you
very
won't
good.
have those, potential big time repairs.
And then also, now there are some vehicles that you might want to weigh out. There's some vehicles that are very expensive to repair, and you may want one of those vehicles and realize it's got a lot of high maintenance cost on it.
Land Rover.
And the warranty may not be that terribly much. I heard that. And the warranty may not necessarily be that much. And you may look at it and say, well, this may be a good option for me. But you have to also be very careful where you buy a warranty from, because there's a lot of companies out there that may sell you a warranty at a decent price. But when it comes time to, let's say something goes out, they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's Thursday, and that's not covered on a Thursday."
Right.
But
that also goes back to what you said. Do your studying, on what you're buying, and if you're thinking about an extended warranty, do the same thing. The reviews go a long way on stuff like
exactly,
that.
and everybody's got their own tolerance level for what they could handle
And
if something was to
expectations, yeah.
come up. But as a general rule, I'm not a strong believer in extended warranties on average.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thanks again. Is there a website that I can go to if I'm looking to compare fuel economy and miles per gallon from side by side on different vehicles?
I just know of this just simply because we were looking at new Tahoe, seeing what they were going for. I noticed that Autotrader.com does have that feature. I'm sure there's several websites that can do that. It's just ironic that you asked that question, because yesterday we found that. So, Aaron, do you have any more?
All right, here we go. I found it.
Hold on.
That website address is fueleconomy.gov.
Okay.
That you can go to. And that's part of the U.S. Department of Energy National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I'm glad I remembered that.
Yeah, man, you are good. You're almost like a script, like on paper.
An encyclopedia. But yes, that would be
In your own
the
handwriting.
website that you would go to. So the answer to that is yes.
Thank you. Why do turn signals blink faster when they're burnt out?
Because the bulbs are
Don't insult them, Aaron. No, yes, that's an indication of the bulb being burnt out. I think Aaron mentioned it before on a previous show that when a bulb is, of course, illuminating, it's looking for a certain amperage, and the car's computers are smart enough to know if that amperage is not there, the bulb must not be visible or not be present or burnt. So they trigger that light a little bit faster so that the driver, of course, is aware of that. Most of the time that still doesn't work.
Yeah.
They still let them ride, but that is what that feature does.
Yes.
Thank you. Here's an age-old question. What's the difference between a turbocharger and a supercharger?
Oh, you're in John Ryan's category right there.
Well, a turbocharger uses exhaust to drive the turbo, basically. It turns a wheel similar to a windmill.
A very fast wheel.
Very fast wheel. It turns it, and it also has another wheel on the other side, what they call the cool side, and it forces pressure, almost like a leaf blower, into the car's intake. A supercharger is actually using the engine power, the actual belt-driven or the crank-driven belt, on the front of the engine to drive a series. Typically, they're a root style or a screw type blower, and it basically does the same thing. It creates positive pressure in the intake manifold.
And the theory behind that is the more air, the more oxygen, the higher the combustion.
And a lot of people say, which one's better. It kind of depends on what you're trying to achieve. Turbos typically are a little bit higher power, higher RPM. A supercharger is a little bit lower end, but does pretty good. The difference between the two is efficiency. One actually uses, again, the engine's power. So the engine's power has to rotate the supercharger, whereas the exhaust, something that it's going to have regardless, powers the turbo.
And by far, we see many, many times more turbo units than we do charger unit or superchargers.
Tend to be more common.
Oh, by far, yeah. As a matter of fact, you have your EcoBoost, and each manufacturer has a different name for it, but these are actually turbocharging units.
And two, of course, obviously we see it a lot, but there's a lot more four-cylinder turbocharged cars, and that's, years ago a four-cylinder might have had 100 horsepower if you're lucky downhill. Now, four-cylinders, some of them have 225, and they drive like V6s. V6s drive like V8s. V8s drive like V10s. So, that's come a long way with just
and
what
along
you're saying,
with that,
induction.
they have more power and get better fuel mileage.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And I got a question that I'm sure a lot of people ask. We all know that diesels and gasoline cars, they're different, but how exactly are they different?
Well, they're definitely different for sure. Typically, now this isn't true on most vehicles, but a diesel engine is direct injected. It is the fuel enters the combustion chamber, and it has a very, very, very high compression ratio. Does not have spark plugs. Diesels ignite off of compression, and that's kind of what gives them so much power. Of course, they're forced inducted, being turbocharged. A gasoline engine, of course, obviously requires fuel. Not what percentage are you thinking that are GDI or direct injected?
Of
Nowadays,
vehicles out there, I would say it's a much, much smaller percentage of cars have direct injection because they hadn't been around that terribly long.
But I guess in one way you could say it is power, efficiency, and torque. They're just they're different animals.
But of course, even with that, even the direct injection, they don't have they still have spark plugs and they still have an ignition system. Hey, we're going to need to take a real quick break. As soon as we return, we'll be right back with more of the Power Hour.
She's real fine, my 409. She's real fine, my 409, my 409. Well, I saved my
And we are back with you with the Power Hour, C&C Auto Show. And we are ready for the next question.
Yeah, JR and Aaron, in your opinion, what is better, four-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive?
Okay. Well, of course, in my opinion, that would depend on what you do
Yeah.
day to day. For instance, if you live somewhere where it snowed all the time and it was icy, I think an all-wheel drive vehicle is a very good option for you. For instance, here, I don't think an all-wheel drive vehicle would be very good, just simply because there's not very many driving situations that all-wheel drive
But
is
if
needed.
you go snow skiing all the time, it may be
Yeah.
a good option.
Exactly. Well, it is, but I would tend to buy a four-wheel drive,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that was the case.
that is true.
Simply that way you would have both options. And I'll go ahead and mention the difference. All-wheel drive means it's always engaged. Now, of course, a lot of them are electronically controlled to where it sees whichever wheel is slipping and it applies power, to that axle. However, it's still typically it's normally 60-40, 60 to the rear, 40 to the front. So that's an all-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive means you have the option or the preference of what mode it's in, whether it be four-wheel high, four-wheel low, of course, or drive. So I tend to like four-wheel drive vehicles better just because, again, you have the option of it versus not being able to turn it on or off. And then rear-wheel drive, obviously there's two-wheel drive trucks, there's two-wheel drive Corvettes. I mean, there's so many different things that are rear-wheel drive. That's just more of a preference.
And if you're like doing normal driving, carrying the kids to school in this type climate,
most people don't even know what the difference.
All you're doing is carrying around a lot of extra weight and using a lot of extra energy for no real reason. There is a little safety factor in there, though. You got to figure if it's raining hard and it is the streets are a little messy. You have more traction with four wheels, so that's a good thing. But as a general rule, you wouldn't need it normal driving this climate. John Ryan mentioned a good option. You pull a boat. Now, of course, you very well may want, and especially if it's a larger boat, you may want a four-wheel drive so you won't slip and slide and burn out your tires trying to get the boat out of the water. You can put it in four-wheel low and pull it out. Now, I do want to go ahead and mention real quick, though, there's some precautions that you want to take with, especially an all-wheel drive vehicle. And John Ryan might mention some other precautions with the four-wheel drive. Let's say you have an all-wheel drive vehicle and you have three tires that are worn significantly down.
Or you had a flat and had to put a new one on it.
Exactly. And you go put one new tire on there, or even if you put two new tires and have two that's not new, then you're changing the rolling diameter on two of the tires. And inside that four-wheel or that all-wheel drive unit, there's a viscous dampener that absorbs the energy. It's used to absorbing energy as you go around turns. And when you change the rolling diameter of one of the tires, you're actually activating that.
It's like you're going around
that energy all the time.
It's like you're going around a turn the entire time.
Exactly. And you will cause some damage inside that unit. Now, it may not be right away. It may take a longer period of time, but you're causing a lot of extra wear. So you want to make sure that's good. You never, ever want to have an all-wheel drive vehicle towed with only two of the wheels off the ground and the other two rolling, because you will definitely burn it out very quickly then. And you want to make sure that your fluids are changed when they should be, because it's critical in an all-wheel drive unit.
Yeah, I think the only thing to add to that, since that was all-wheel drive, I'll cover four-wheel drive, would be just being aware of how that system works and what to look for. For instance, if the vehicle's in four-wheel drive, what lights light up? What, is there a message that pops up? Just know how that system works.
And know what speed that you can connect and disconnect the four-wheel unit in as far as low.
Right.
And also knowing what surfaces. You might want to cover that a little bit in four-wheel drive.
Exactly, because, for instance, say there's kids, not that this is advised, but there's kids playing around your car and they hit four-wheel drive and you get back in it, it's in four-wheel drive. So you need to know what lights to look for. As far as surfaces, typically I think I can narrow it down to speeds, really. Four-wheel drive low is if you're, say, in a situation where obviously it needs four-wheel drive, but you need to use a lot of torque, whether you be pulling something out, like Aaron mentioned, a boat. It has a lot more power, but it limits the wheel spin because it's in a lower range, just like a farm tractor. Four-wheel high would be for more of a higher speed, say 30 and up. Say you're going down the road, like Aaron said, in a snowy condition, to where you need to drive it like a regular car, but you want all four wheels to pull. And again, just being...
And you don't want to drive in four-wheel low on pavement and be turning any particular direction, because let's say you're turning left, the right side has to turn faster
than the other
and that
side,
can
yeah.
cause some issues with the unit.
And two is just of course knowing how that system operates. Aaron mentioned how to engage it. Some vehicles require you to put it in neutral to go to 4 low versus 4 high. Some of them you can shift on the fly. Some of them you have to come to a complete stop. So just consult your owner's manual or call the C&C Auto Show and just know how that system works.
Well, with that being said, I've heard that a lot of people, they'll recommend, I live in the mountains, I get a lot of snow, I need 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Mm-hmm. Is there really a benefit in ice and snow, or does it really not matter if you don't have chains on your tires?
Yes, absolutely. If you can imagine, I guess I'll use this kind of random analogy. 2 people pushing a car versus 4 people pushing a car. The traction, the power, a lot of added things. For instance, if one wheel's completely off the ground, now you only have one wheel pulling versus a 4-wheel drive would potentially have 3 wheels pulling.
And if one is on ice, it just as well be off the ground.
Yeah, it may as well be off the ground. And of course, too, something to add to that, a lot of the 4-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicles have locking differentials. It's not really common on all-wheel drive vehicles simply because that it wouldn't be very, user-friendly. Well, not user-friendly, but it wouldn't
effective,
be it wouldn't be cost-effective, and it would have a lot of different driving characteristics if the rear tires were locked all the time. But a lot of times vehicles even have electronically controlled rear differentials to where you can lock and unlock, and it'd be hard to explain to a radio listener what that feeling is, but when both rear tires are locked, it doesn't turn as well, but it has significant amount of traction. Again, you could take one tire in a ditch and completely be off the ground, and the other tire would still pull versus a regular open differential. That one tire that's off the ground is still going to be getting the power. So that's another thing to consider. If you, like you mentioned, if you were moving to the mountains, you lived in the mountains, electronic locking differential, there's automatic locking differential, there's limited slip, all-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. There's so many
some
things.
Research and then call the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ask us. Okay, we got time for another one.
Or in other words, the Car 101 show, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
What's the difference between a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke engine?
Aaron, what's the difference in sound? Can you do that? That's 2-stroke. 4-stroke.
Okay.
2-stroke revs up a lot faster. It has a very, very high RPM. Again, just a thing that hits home with everybody. Typically, a weed eater is 2-stroke. Your lawnmower is 4-stroke. You can definitely hear the difference. A weed eater spins at a gajillion miles per hour versus a lawnmower a lot slower. Power-wise, power is created in very high RPMs in a 2-stroke. And, of course, power is typically lower RPM on a gasoline engine. That I know of. There's, of course, back in the day, way back in the day, there was 2-stroke vehicles.
Yeah,
but not
and
now.
you don't see as many 2-stroke vehicles or 2-stroke motorcycles even now, mainly because of emission controls. And there's different way. I mean, you can talk about the strokes. I mean, you have the you're pulling down.
Oh yeah, of course, totally different strokes. Yeah,
when the
doesn't
piston
have
comes
valves.
down.
It has reed valves, that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and it's just a totally different design engine, and in most cases, the 2-stroke engine, you have to have your fuel and oil mixed.
Yeah,
and as it comes down.
Typically, a 2-stroke has a lot of power, and a 4-stroke has a lot of torque. Just different animals.
Makes sense.
Okay, we are
coming close.
Yeah, we are. We're very close. It is time to close this hour down. The time clock's on E, and we need to pull over, but we'll be back on the road in no time. I'm Aaron Clements with co-host John Ryan Mooney, and our show producers are Sherry Moxley, Zach Llewellyn, Bert Dean, Bo Roberts, and we want to say thank you to Alan Dean for asking the questions today. We appreciate that very much, Alan. Okay, and also Sandy Klein. We would all like to say thank you to all of you that tuned in and logged in to the C&C Auto Show, and we look forward to seeing you again real soon, and keep those seatbelts buckled and don't text and drive. See you soon.